I'd like to talk to you about how awesome components are. And more specifically, I want to talk to you about how you can enable component-driven development within a WordPress environment. I'm Phil Bennett. I'm a technical lead at a development agency in Berlin called Bleach. As you can probably tell by my accent, I'm not originally from Berlin. I'm an immigrant. I'm originally from the UK. I've been a web developer for quite some time. I'm old enough to have been originally referred to as a webmaster. So I've been developing websites since 1998. And I do it because I'm passionate about solving people's problems with technology and at the end of the day getting paid. So, components are awesome. There's a number of technical reasons why a component is awesome and why developing in a component-based architecture is really, really cool. Separation of concerns. So separation of concerns means that the business challenge that you're focusing on at the time, all of the code, all of the business logic is contained within the same component. This allows you to really focus on that business challenge and that component. Components allow you to reuse code really, really easily. They allow you to take components that you've built for other projects and reuse them in those, and it also allows you to take components that were similar originally and very quickly and easily update them. Components are maintainable. Keeping them contained from a technical point of view just allows really easily allows you to see what's going on inside a module, inside a component, and keep those things contained. Components are also disposable. We all have to admit that we build bad code. Everyone builds bad code at some point in the proceedings, and code becomes legacy very quickly. In a component architecture, it allows you to just dispose of components without having a major impact on the overall platform. It makes the components testable, so they can be the test can be contained, and it allows you to really focus on making sure that single module is really, really good, so the code quality is up there without having to focus on anything else other than that specific component. And it also allows parallel development, so you can get projects delivered quicker. It allows you to have your developers focusing on different components at different times. But that's not really what I want to talk to you about. We all know about the cool technology elements of components. You can see how web development is moving in that direction with platforms like React, really moving to a much more component-based architecture. What I really want to talk to you about, though, is how we use components to deal with the challenges of agency life. And there are some really significant challenges that sit outside of the day-to-day development of a component or of a website. Core one, getting paid. If you don't get paid, no one's happy. Underestimating development time on a project is a really miserable experience for everyone involved. But getting paid at the end of the day is the key to success for everybody. And the other challenge really is communicating concepts and talking to clients. It can be very difficult. Really, in an agency environment, you frequently find yourself in a scenario where a client speaks a different language to the person who's developing a module. And now this isn't a negative thing at all. It's just that those two people have different job functions in their day-to-day life, and they just have a different understanding of how things work. So that can cause challenges in terms of communicating between developer and client. So how do we deal with these two challenges that come up? What we do at Bleach is we really focus on components and try and live and breathe components. So everything that we do has a thread of component to it. We think about things in a componentized way, we communicate in a componentized way, we project manage in a componentized way, and it really helps delivering websites. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through an example of how we would deliver a web project at Bleach, focusing on a componentized way. We're going to use an example, and we're going to take the Bleach website, our own agency website as an example, and the Bleach website is just a very simple one-pager. Well, it's not a very simple one-pager, it's a very complicated one-pager, but it is just a one-pager. It just explains how we work, explains who we are and how we can help organisations. So whenever we start a project, we will always receive a design or a wireframe concept from the client. We don't have design in-house, so we always receive a concept of how it will work. And then what we will do is we will step through the design and break it down into its component modules. So in the Bleach website, we have a navigation menu that may actually have subcomponents. So, for example, the language switch might actually be dealt with as a separate component because it's actually, although it looks simple, it could be possibly a little bit more complicated to deal with a multilingual site. But at the top you have the navigation, which is a component. You then have the hero image, which is a separate component. We then have a video, just a simple video module that's its own component. Then we have a WYSIWYG area and then a grid of clients. So those two would be split out into separate components to deal with. But it doesn't mean that things have to be really simple. So we have on our site this portfolio section, which is a little bit more complex for a component, but it's all dealt with within its own component. The image is a little bit more interesting, and the coloured images on this are actually animated on the site. But we maintain this as just one component. It's just a slightly more complex component. And then we have some other very simple components like a brands list and an agency profile. Once we've broken those components down, it really easily allows us to identify exactly how long each of those modules is going to take. Thinking and estimating a larger project is a very challenging thing to do, but breaking it down into a component level it just means I know how long a WYSIWYG module is going to take. We've done it 100 times before. We know how long a video component is going to take. We've done it 100 times before. So we can easily break those costs down for the client. What you see in front of you is a cost breakdown of a project that we would send to a client as an offer. We don't really send much more to a client. It's pretty much just this plus some explanation about how we work. Not a 40, 50 page proposal explaining about how we understand their business, etc., etc. Just a really granular, detailed breakdown of their components. There are some really, really awesome benefits for this. It allows us to communicate very clearly what is being delivered, so the client at all points understands exactly what they're going to receive. They can also really easily see the costs that will be involved in that. So if they find an expensive module that they are questioning, they can actually really easily see if the cost that they're spending on that module is of business benefit to them, if that module is actually valuable. It also allows them, if there are budget concerns, to move things around, maybe postpone some modules for a later date, and maybe just drop modules out altogether, but it gives a really clear understanding. And we generally find that clients always get this and are really happy to see where their money's going, and it allows that. So this project gets signed off really, really quickly. Once we've got the sign off, we then deal with project management in the same kind of way. We deal with it on a module per module basis. Developers are assigned a module that they can then just go away and deal with. And can focus really on that module and doing an awesome job on that specific module. They don't have to worry about all the other things around in the project. They just need to make that one component awesome. It allows them to understand exactly how long they've got because we've estimated it really clearly, and they know when and how it needs to be delivered. And they also know the scope of it because the scope is contained within that component, so it's just nice and easy to deal with. And then, easy to just assign and deal with it. Then it means that we can use a really simple project management system. We don't have to really have a complex resource management. We just know that we've got 5 days in the week, and we know that how many modules we can get done in that week. It's a really nice way of dealing with the project management. So you've got the process. You define a module. The client knows exactly how much it's going to cost. The developer knows how long it's actually going to take to deal with. They know exactly what they're building. Then the client can understand it at the end of the day and agree that is completed, and then you get paid. So that deals with that challenge. So it really simplifies the process of getting paid in an agency life. But also, along this whole process of getting paid, there is the challenge of communicating with the client and talking through concepts and just dealing with it. But dealing with it in a componentized way is really nice. It really helps this communication flow. When everybody in the project is focused on one component at a time, it allows you to really focus that communication. So everyone is thinking exactly about that module and that component, and exactly how that should work, what's being delivered, what the delivery is. It also helps clients who are time poor. They can focus on the modules that are important to them, and also define who in their organisation is responsible for a module. So it might be that a module is across departments and someone else can deal with it on the client side. Someone has much more interest and focus on that. So once the module the conversation about the module has been done and delivered, the other challenge with a website is obviously the maintenance and management of the site. We're a web development agency. No one in our organisation is interested in doing content management for a client, and clients really want to be in control of their websites. Using WordPress as a platform to contain this component architecture really allows clients to be able to understand exactly how this works. Using previews in the back end of WordPress, we can then have these components as sections, and then it just really simply allows the clients to just go in and edit and add the information that they need to. We find that clients really get on board with this and find it very, very simple to understand the concept behind it and then manage their sites really easily. So, we have solved, with components, the two big challenges of agency life. Isn't that awesome? But how do we actually do it from a technical point of view? Some people who are significantly smarter than me, the team at Bleach, have developed a framework that sits inside WordPress. The framework is called Flynt. This is what we live and breathe in terms of development. This is our platform that we use for delivering pretty much all of our client-based projects. We will use it for any CMS-based delivery that we have. So what is Flynt? Flynt is a component-based WordPress framework for development teams and their clients. A framework that benefits both sides of that relationship. Some technical buzzwords. We've tried our best when developing this platform to not reinvent the wheel. We're using technologies within this framework that are best in class, the technologies that other people are using because they're good. We don't want to have to rewrite a rendering engine. We don't have to want to rewrite a templating engine. So we're using these tools to enable us to deliver our platform. So we use Yarn for package management, Gulp for for build processes. The whole platform is built on Advanced Custom Fields Pro plugin for WordPress, the dynamic content field. We use Webpack and Stylus for the CSS preprocessor, and then so we use Stylus as the CSS preprocessor, and then we use Twig, Timber, and Composer for the PHP side of things, and then we use Jeet because we're trying to not tie this down to a front-end framework like Bootstrap. But we still want to maintain the breakpoints and those kind of nice responsive functionality that we can get from a framework like that. So, what is contained within the Flynt ecosystem? So, the Flynt ecosystem is kind of a set of building blocks and tools that allow us to do our job in a componentized way. The core of it is the Flynt core, which is a WordPress plugin that manages the rendering and how everything is put together and building up the site. We've put together a Flynt starter theme, which is a theme that has two functions. One is it helps us kick off a project quickly, and it has a defined template that we can start working with, but also it's a good way to get into the Flynt platform. So looking at the Flynt starter theme gives you an idea of the core concepts of Flynt. We have a Yeoman generator, which allows you to quickly build components and features for Flynt. We have a Flynt CLI, which is a command line interface that helps you manage a Flynt site in terms of deployment and management of that platform. We also have another plugin for WordPress called ACF Field Group Composer, which is a plugin that allows you to manage your advanced custom field groups in a JSON file that then gets loaded into the WordPress backend. So you can then control in a really nice way the fields on your custom post types and in your components and manage that in a file, so it's got all of the lovely benefits of version control. We've also got a Docker build for Flynt, which allows you to get the system up and running really quickly without having to worry about platforms, server systems. The modules that are defined in blue, the Flynt core, the Flynt starter theme, and the ACF field group composer are all open source and available now. The ones that are defined in grey are either internal tools that we need to amend slightly before we make them public, or tools that are public but not fully documented. The Yeoman generator is available on NPM and works really, really nicely. The Flynt Docker build is in our GitHub repository but has no documentation, and the Flynt CLI we're using internally, but we want to make it less bleachy. It's very tailored towards our workflow before we open source that Flynt CLI. So that's the concept, but I want to show you how it works in practice. And I'm just going to do a quick demo of how Flynt works. I've taken some steps before this demo, so I've installed all of the prerequisites of Flynt. I've installed Node and Yarn, and I've set up a WordPress build using Bedrock and Composer, and I've installed the core plugins that are required for Flynt. So Flynt Core, Timber, ACF Pro, and our ACF Field Group Composer plugin, and I've also installed the Flynt starter theme. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just step through creating a very simple component and showing you how that works. So now I'll go for the demo. Let me just flip to a development environment. So this is my PHP Storm IDE. I've navigated into the theme folder. You can see here on the left the files that sit within our theme. I'm not going to talk through all of those now. We will release some more documentation exactly what's in the starter theme at a later date. And then in terms of the WordPress install, you can see that in all the plugins, the only plugins that we've got installed are ACF Field Group Composer, ACF, Flynt Core, and then the only must-use plugins that are in here are all of the Bedrock default plugins that come with Bedrock. Super simple setup. There's nothing currently in the theme at all. I've created a home page that's been defined as the front page, and there's nothing in it. So we'll take the first step, which is starting the Flynt build process, the Yarn build process. This starts a watch process that builds up, does all the stylus pre-processing, starts a browser sync server as well, if that's what you want to use, does all your linting, and then has built the theme for you. So then you've got a local host, which is a browser sync version. Now what I want to do is I want to generate a component, and we'll use the Yeoman generator to do that. So navigate into the theme folder and then just type yo Flynt. Now the Flynt generator will ask me whether I want to create a component or a feature or a page template. A component is the cool stuff that we've been talking about. A feature is something that sits in your template but is a little bit more global. So it allows you to add functionality to your theme that's a bit more global, and the page template is obviously a WordPress page template. So we're going to create a component. The generator then gives you an option, asks you what type of component it is, whether it's accordion, a block, just a category for your component. We're just going to do a post list, so we'll select list. Then it asks you for a name. We're going to do a post list, so I'm going to simply call it posts. It then asks you what you want to generate. We're not going to use all of these elements, but I'm going to select all anyway and talk you through exactly what's in a default component in the Flynt architecture. So that's generated our component. You'll now see in the component folder that we have our list posts component. So within this folder are a number of files. There is a fields file. The fields file contains the JSON that defines the fields related to the component. By default, it creates a few things. It creates a translatable option. It's multilingual support within the Flynt platform. There's a global option, so if you wanted to define a field that's global across your template, you can do it in a global option within the component. And then you've got your layout for the component. There's a functions.php file that uses Wordpress actions and filters to allow you to manipulate the data within your component. We've got this add component data filter. This is where you would manipulate the core data if you wanted to do something a little bit more advanced with your data for your component. We have an index.twig file, which is generated simply as the h1 tag for the component, and then a div. There is an image preview, which I'll explain in a little bit more detail later. There's a README file that allows you to define documentation within Bleach. We use this to sort of define a specification for the template when the component is generated. You've got a script.js is where you can put your components as JavaScript. It uses web components to really contain that JavaScript within the component itself. There's a snippets file, which is where we put technical information about the component itself, and then you have your stylus file. So we've now generated this list post component, and what I want to do to start with is to add it to the page component. So if you see on the demo, you see this page component field. Within our default template, we have defined a page components field, which is a flexible content type field, and as you can see by the location, it's on every page. So any page you create will have this field, and we just need to add to the layout the component that we've just added. List posts fields layout. It's namespaced, so you can access your components there and keep it all nice and tidy. So then if we refresh this page, we now have a list post as a component, and there you can see your preview. So if you put a preview image, the client can see exactly what they're adding. So we add our list posts in, and it's just asking for some text for the post. So, and then why it's asking for text is because within our default default fields.json, there's this subfield text defined. So we don't want global options and translatable options for this demo, so I'll remove those. And what we want to do is we want to create a list of posts. So I'm just going to change this text field into a post object relationship. We'll call it posts. We'll call the field name posts. And then we'll use a post object. Now, Flynt ACF Composer, ACF Field Grep Composer supports all of the default advanced custom field types. I'm not going to cover them all here. You can go and look at the documentation, but it does then allow us to create a link, a post object to the page. And we want to do multiple, so I'm just going to define multiple as true. It just takes an integer 1 character. So now if we flip back to our build, and then add a list component, instead of that text field, we now see posts. Because I haven't defined a custom post type, it'll link through to anything that's a post, so the original hello world, and then as you can see, it also links through to itself because a page is a post. So if we now update that home page, and then we can flip to the main site, and we can see our component is there and rendering. Why is it just a title? Because that's all that's defined within the index.twig. So using the twig file, we simply want to just create a quick list of the posts that have been defined and assigned in that field. So we use twig notation to iterate through all the posts in posts. And we will put those inside an unordered list. And then for each of the posts, we will just put a list element in here and just output the title. So now that index.twig is just iterating through all of the posts assigned to it and then just outputting the titles. So when we refresh, you will now see a list with the titles. So that's how easy it is to build a component and manipulate the data. What I'll also quickly show you is styling. So let's add a class to the list. Unfortunately, I called the module list post, not amazing naming standard because the list within list post is now list post list. And then simply define in my stylus some styles. Let's change the list style and remove the list style, and let's just make the font size a bit bigger. So now we flip back, the build process has run and generated the CSS from the stylus, and now we have a lovely list. So that's how easy it is to build a component with Flynt. If the list was what you were the client was expecting, then you get paid, and that's super simple, really simple way of doing it. Thank you for your time. If you want to find out more about Flynt, there's some links below this video. So on the left you have a link to the starter theme, which is really the best place to get involved with Flynt. So it really helps you understand the core concepts behind the Flynt architecture. And then on the right you've got our Twitter feed for the Flynt platform, and if you've got any questions, just fire them away to us on Twitter. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to me rant on about how awesome components are.